So today I'll be presenting you on flood risk management and resilience from a local authority perspective. While some of you might have actually worked with lead local flood authorities in the past, maybe through our role in the statutory planning process or on capital project schemes for delivery of flood defence grant and aid schemes. There are a lot of other roles we undertake within council related to flood risk and resilience. So I'd like to explain them, talk you through a previous event we've had and how we've adapted and changed following the event with resilience to move the council forward as well. So slide. So Mike, can we change this slide? Yeah. Right, so a bit about me. So I'm Carl Hodgson, I'm the Senior Flood Risk Engineer for Gateshead Counci. I've been at the council for 15 years. The first 8 of that was spent in the council sustainable transport and traffic planning teams. I've had previous experience at consultancy working on the highway and drainage design on new developments in schools. I actually moved into this role on June 2012. So that's remember that date for later in the presentation, please. I was chartered by the CIWEM in my interview was in August 2018. I think it was the hottest day in British history. But yeah, I was chartered then, so that was quite an achievement for myself. Right, next slide, please. Initially, when I was going to present this, I was expecting it to be in a lecture theatre in Leeds, but now I believe the event has gone global. So I want to say a big hello from Gateshead. So not many people might know where it is. Certainly people I've spoken to in London don't know where it is. So just to let you know, it's not Newcastle, but it is situated on the south bank of the River Tyne. So Newcastle is a city to the north, where the town to the south. We're one of 5 unitary authorities that make up Tyne and Weir. We have a proud coal mine and industrial heritage, and we have the Great North Run come through us. So if any of you have run the Great North Run, miles 2 to 6 go through our borough, and we are home to the Angel of the North, Paul Gascoigne, Chris Waddle, and the light bulb, where Joseph Swan invented the light bulb. Within my role, I'm responsible for the delivery of the council's duties as lead local flood authority, and this is a role held by local authorities since the introduction of the Flood and Water Management Act in 2010. Historically, the council did have responsibilities as a land drainage authority, but there were new responsibilities as part of this act that councils had to deliver. Lead local flood authorities, they were created around the time where there was a lot of austerity in Britain. We had a lot of changes within councils due to cost cutting. So a lot of LLFAs are in different departments in different councils. We sit within our engineering service and part of a highway and flood risk management team as well. So slide. Yeah, so there are six key duties as part of the LLFA. There are more, but that would be a presentation in itself. So we prepare a local flood risk management strategy. This is a document produced council by council. It outlines what we have to do and how we intend to do it. We cooperate with other risk management authorities. This includes Northumbrian Water, who have responsibility for strategic overview of sewers, and the Environment Agency, who have strategic overview of main rivers and coastline, where you have that. We are an inland authority. We also work closely with our neighbouring lead local flood authorities. This is all done through regular meetings and strategic groups. We are a statutory consultee on major planning applications. This is for planning applications of 10 or more properties and sites over 1 hectare. This function is actually delivered by a SUDS officer within a separate built and natural environment team, and not done within my team. Flooding incidents must be investigated by the lead local flood authority and reports provided where we see required, and these are known as Section 19 reports. We also must maintain a record and a register of assets. This is a Section 21 database, and we have to make sure these are inspected and surveyed adequately. And we also have to consent any works within ordinary water courses as well. The delivery of these duties relies on the assistance of other council services, but also the work we do with these services is key to help and move the council forward in a number of different areas. It's a two-way street, I guess you would say. So firstly, as a highway authority, obviously given I work in highway and flood risk management, this is quite a key part of my job. We have to take reasonable measures to maintain the highway. This obviously includes draining the highway, and many of the council's critical assets on that Section 21 database, they are highway assets. You know, we have hundreds of miles of adopted highway with drainage systems. We have multiple pumping stations, 30,000 gullies, all of which of course have to be managed and maintained. How we fund that is that's changed recently. The Department of Transport have a challenge fund, and this is a scored system, so we have to achieve a certain level, so level 1, 2 or 3, and we have to demonstrate how we are making improvements and working more efficiently to in relation to a lot of assets across the highway, including highway drainage, flood risk and asset management as part of that. Our team also deal with the investigation of the operational issues on the highway as well as Section 19 reports to make sure that the drainage networks working adequately, and identify and project manage any improvement teams too. The LLFA also works closely with the local planning authority to ensure new development does not pose a negative risk to the borough with relation to flooding. It's good to identify opportunities for betterment wherever possible as well, and flood risk information submitted with plan applications needs to be reviewed. So a lot of this is on getting good quality information, drainage designs and flood risk assessments. While this is undertaken by Peter, our SUDS officer in a different team, we do have regular contact with him, and you know, to look at where this can be integrated with flood defence schemes we may have identified, or if it would require resilience plans. Which brings me on to resilience planning. So the council has responsibilities as a Category 1 responder in resilience planning. So as part of this, we have to prepare emergency plans and business continuity plans for a multitude of situations or events. So one of those is flooding. We work with them to provide proactive approaches to making properties more resilient to flooding and managing the expectations of communities. The resilience planning team are also part of the Northumbria Local Flood Resilience Forum, and flooding is part of the environment topic. Obviously what the resilience planning team do can be quite topical. Obviously at the minute they are concentrating on pandemics. We work closely with the strategic planning team. So these are the teams that oversee the growth and change of Gateshead. So we contribute to the local plan and urban core plan, which shape a borough and identify how land can be used and how we want to deliver our aspirations as a borough. So this includes close involvement with the team on area action plans, strategic regeneration projects, identifying potential housing growth sites, and ensuring flooding does not have a detrimental impact on the economic growth of the borough. The council has a number of responsibilities also as a landowner. We have a broad portfolio right across the borough, so this is things like leisure centres and facilities, parks and open spaces, schools, car parks. We even have an international stadium and some entertainment venues as well. Of course, we have with being a council, we have a number of local authority housing as well. So we need to work with these to ensure they have adequate drainage systems to function, make sure that we assist with any of drainage problems and repairs, and ensure risk of flooding from council land is minimised too. So making sure there's no runoff to other properties or what have you causing risk. We as a service also undertake drainage design and flood risk assessment. with our in-house architects, engineers and capital project teams. And a major part of my job is to deliver the council's medium-term plan of flood risk capital projects. So these are done with our design team and our direct labour. So we all sit in the same service from late last year. Right, slide, please. Thank you. So we also work closely with external partners as well. Predominantly Northumbria Water and the Environment Agency. Good working relationships with these are critical. A lot of schemes can't happen unless you do joint working. It gets funding, and it helps work together to get innovative approaches as well. You know, we meet with Northumbrian Water and the Environment Agency at a number of regional forums, Regional Flood and Coastal Committee, Tyne Flood Group, Northumbrian Integrated Drainage Partnership. But we also meet them on site quite a lot as well. So our technical officers will attend site after a flood, and we will meet and discuss with Northumbrian Water. And we have quarterly liaison groups as well. So good communication between key stakeholders is important. We also have been having increasing engagement with the Coal Authority. As I mentioned before, the council has a proud industrial heritage, but it doesn't come without its problems. So historically there was a lot of deep coal mining done within Gateshead, and to allow this to be done, water was proactively pumped. So the groundwater table within Gateshead was artificially lowered. And since the closure of the mines, it's been naturally increasing back to its normal level. So we've been getting an increase in groundwater flooding incidents, and we've been engaging with the Coal Authority to make sure that these don't pose a health or safety risk to flooding. But we've also worked closely with them to ensure the future development and any areas we would like to take forward for future development consider the risk of future mine water levels. It's quite a complex and emergent topic, but we have been engaging also with Newcastle University for further research on it, and I think it's quite an interesting thing that's going on. So we also work closely with members of the public, local residents, businesses, elected councillors who represent the members of the public. That's a day-to-day part of our job. You know, we attend ward meetings, things like that. Where we can help, we do help at any level. You know, whether it's soggy gardens or what have you. You know, we do try and give advice to residents wherever possible. But due to the geography of Gateshead, we have a mix of urban and rural areas, and a varied and interesting workload and experiences and various sources of flooding. Slide, please, Michael. Right, so just to briefly go through recent events in Gateshead, we have had a number of incidents. Firstly, before my time was the autumn 2008 flooding of the River Derwent, which is a tributary of the Tyne, and it's in our more rural side of the borough. It flooded multiple properties and damaged the bridge. We had multiple storms in the summer of 2012. These were multiple, led to flooding of a river Tyne, flooding of multiple properties, and I'll be going into that very shortly. We also had a tidal surge in 2013. This flooded a number of properties close to the River Tyne and caused operational problems to our famous Millennium Bridge. We had multiple storms in the winter of 2015 and 2016. So that was Storm Desmond and Storm Frank. We had a number of flooded properties, and it also caused landslides and a culvert collapse, which meant I had to be out and about on Boxing Day, unfortunately. But the incidents that happened and some of the properties that were flooded on those days were different to those on the summer floods of 2012. So seasonal storms have made a bit of a difference there. Then on the Easter weekend, a few months later, we had a mine water incident that caused flooding and led to road closures within the west of our borough again, restricting access to businesses and retail parks. So that involved a lot of engagement from the Coal Authority. and our resilience team also. Further surface water flooding did occur in August last year. A number of properties did flood, and there was damage caused to the highway and culverts in mainly rural areas of the borough. And it was a good opportunity to see how some of the schemes we have put in from other events have been working. But we were quite lucky in the fact we had no significant events through this winter. So I think our time will probably come later in the year. Right, slide, please. So the most significant event was the summer of 2012. You noticed I put a specific date I started the job. Well, that was the 28th of June 2012. So I was new in the post. I took over from an engineer who was retiring, and he finished the council shortly after lunch on a Thursday. 2 hours later, a month of rain fell in 2 hours. So on the 28th of June, Gateshead had 300 reports of surface water flooding right across the borough. Unfortunately, it was early to mid-afternoon, and most people were at work, unable to do anything and to protect their properties. We even had an officer who was unable to get home because they were actually as part of a team that responds to the flood, and their property actually flooded. We are aware of at least 250 properties that did flood. The impact on the economy and infrastructure was also significant. There was 80 properties, 80 highway reports of flooding, regional transport, bus services. We've got a local light rail system called the Metro that was suspended. Also, the main East Coast Main Line was suspended as well. So it did really bring the region to standstill. People were unable to get home, cars were written off, and flooding on the highway also restricted emergency services from getting and accessing some locations, especially some rural communities and villages. We had over 50 businesses report flooding, including warehouses, factories, banks, and the access to many others was also affected. The Metro Centre, which is one of Europe's largest shopping centres, also flooded because the roof drainage couldn't cope with the volume of water. We also had schools, both primary and comprehensive schools, did flood, places of worship, and hotels and venues were also flooded. Now, we should have a video here that is just a little taster of a news article following the event.
I think maybe the sound isn't playing on the video.
Yeah, so yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, you can hear me, right? So this video is basically explaining how the water came down, obviously, at an excessive rate. It showed you some properties that have been flooded, and that man there was explaining how the flooding's impacted him. Yeah, obviously it's expressing how a surface water event, people aren't prepared for it as well. So I think it might be worth sharing a link to this video later, maybe. Just it's a good video to set the scene, but yeah.
Yeah, when we post the recording afterwards, we can also include a link to this video.
Yeah. Oh well. Right. So next slide, please, Michael. There we go. There's a link in the presentation. Right, next slide, Michael. Right. So next up, so obviously that was the incident, and the response for incidents like that is coordinated by our resilience planning team. At this time, and in any major incident, they will implement a response plan specific to that type of incident. So within within this response, we work with our direct labour and emergency services who go out and basically attend incidents and try and get things moving again as quick as possible, to provide a central point of command and coordination, and worked with other agencies, police, fire, rescue, environment agency, and members of the resilience team also attended the incident, and they used a multitude of technology, including things like flood warnings, hazard manager, civil contingencies advisor, and live information like river levels to monitor the event. Any correspondence with the council was collated and monitored, and dealing with Northumbrian Water and Environment Agency, all of their correspondence came in as well. So all of this information was collated following the event, and there was a debrief to ensure that all issues were dealt with. So the debrief, we actually had meetings, I think, until the March of the following year. So that was 10 months. We had monthly meetings just for updates on what happened. So next slide, please, Mike. So the LLFA, so that was me, collated reports from multiple sources, including Northumbrian Water, the Environment Agency, our customer services, and the housing company who manage our council housing, or local authority housing. What happened was we noticed there was a lot of clusters, and we set up working groups for areas where there was 20 or more properties flooded. There was 10 of these areas, and they were right across the borough. So we, in these areas, will work closely with Northumbrian Water, ward councillors, the housing company where they had housing stock, and the council's community-based services team, to ensure residents were updated and aware that we were looking into things. There was also a strategic recovery group set up with senior council officers representing the services involved, and Northumbrian Water attended as well. And within this group, the council made a commitment to ensure all reported locations were investigated, and we would make improvements wherever possible. So all sites were visited between July and November. Unfortunately, we had additional events in July, August, and September. So they also had to be investigated as part of this programme. And again, engaging with Northumbrian Water, we visited sites with them, we surveyed our infrastructure, their infrastructure, determining where any improvements could be made together. So being new to the job, it was great to actually meet with people, and it's helped forge very good working relationships with them still to this day. I personally met residents to talk through the events, and attended with the council's gully maintenance and jetting teams, who not only were they part of the response, but they've had decades of experience on dealing with these flood assets, especially the highway ones. So given I was new to the role, their years and years of local knowledge was absolutely indispensable, and people who like that who work for council should never ever be taken for granted, because they help identify solutions and for localised problems as well. There was an intense period of dealing with members of the public. Slide, Michael. Sorry. So it was an intense period of dealing with the public and businesses following the incident. Initially, most people understood it was an exceptional event. I mean, you saw from the videos there was quite a lot of water. And I think I spent about the first 2 to 3 weeks fielding phone calls, responding to emails of residents before we really get out and about on site. There was an understanding, it was exceptional, and a lot of work had to be done in the longer term to reduce the risk of flooding. But what I did find was, when I was talking to people, the public perception of flooding, it was a little bit misunderstood, especially with relation to surface water and surface water events. I very commonly heard things like, I shouldn't have flooded, I don't live on a floodplain, or, why did I flood? I live halfway up a hill. That's something we've had to look at addressing in the future. But there was a strong perception from some about responsibility of protection. You know, that the council had to individually protect properties, and that, you know, the council had to provide sandbags, and obviously given the magnitude and speed of which the event happened, sandbags, you know, were provided as best as it could have been. After visiting a number of properties, it was also clear that others had, or some had, inadvertently increased their risk of flooding. So they had extended their driveways, external landscape and things like walls would change the flow, even taking out downcomers that go into the pipe, and all of this contributed, if not to their own property, potentially to neighbouring properties, or you know, it was additional water entering the sewer network, causing potential problems downstream as well. So that's urban creep. We also had cases where residents didn't report flooding. They didn't want any works around the area, worrying that it might impact the house value or be a visible advertisement that this area is a flood risk area also. So slide, Michael. So as a result of this, and obviously the investigations made, we undertook around 50 small scale improvements in the 10 months following the event. So these were low cost solutions that had to change flow, things like that. They didn't go through too much of a design process, but they were almost all in areas where the councils had power to operate. So predominantly what I would class as highway drainage schemes, or schemes within our own council assets as well. Slide. Right. So highway drainage improvements were key to them. So things like new gullies, improvement of systems, and new infrastructure, and the repair of existing infrastructure. We had bunds and ditches, so features around open spaces, predominantly in school and leisure sites, to divert flow away from buildings or hold water in a particular location on a site. We also installed a number of attenuation tanks within the highway, areas where the highway drainage system may not have been able to hold that level of water coming down, so just putting that under the ground in some additional gullies and letting the flow drain away later through the highway drainage system. We also implemented highway treatments such as street end treatments, curb raising and build outs, which were installed to divert the flow of water within the highway as well, so diverting it away from properties again in open spaces. We did a number of localised works around buildings, council buildings, schools, community centres, things like walls and again bunds and ditches, and we undertook a significant amount of works to some culverts, improving them or be the inlet of a size to reduce the risk of future blockage or surcharges. While these were implemented to reduce the risk of flooding, it was always acknowledged that detailed and larger schemes needed to be done. There's been a number of bigger schemes done since this, including property level protection schemes, sewer improvement schemes, SUD schemes and larger capital schemes. But due to the higher value of these projects, and the requirement for partnership work and external funding to deliver them, we needed more time and experience to deliver them. Right, slide. So putting those small scale schemes in, it initially gave residents assurances, which I think was key to the recovery process as well. Because one element of flooding I found was that the mental health and how people were being affected. Obviously, I've spoke about the initial correspondence I've had with members of the public, and that there was additional incidents. We found that residents' behaviours changed over time, and some were flooded more than once with the later floods, and were flooded twice, unfortunately, and one even flooded the day after they moved back in, which was quite a horrible thing to happen. Correspondence came harder, especially in public meetings. Residents were a bit more argumentative. They'd lost personal items, and I think at times they are emotional and just need an authoritative figure just to express their frustrations too. Hello. Right, am I still there? Shelley, can
Yes, no, you're all good.
I'm still there. I'm still there. Right. Okay. So sorry. Where was I? Someone's just tried to FaceTime us there. Sorry. So yeah. So I learned how residents were changing their behaviour. People were taking half days due to weather forecasts. You know, residents stopped actually going on holiday in case they were too far away from their home, and rainfall came. Others were on sick leave due to stress. The council contacted a lot more frequently with highway drainage cleaning requests and provision of sandbags. There was also an increase of incoming calls leading up to the anniversary of the flooding as well, so there might have been a psychological impact on the dates themselves. And over time, I've found that, you know, other residents' health have deteriorated. Some families have relocated or separated. Many didn't have insurance, or their policies didn't cover flooding. So the impact of the event have been ongoing for years after. But slide. Yeah, but there was also an impact on the non-residential side of flooding. So as I mentioned, we had a number of businesses that flooded in the area. So there's a picture of one of our local HSBC branches. So, you know, it impacted them in a way where they had to close financially. Some businesses didn't, unfortunately, reopen. And so, you know, employees of the business were out of work, and it affected them financially. Stock was damaged. There were other businesses that couldn't get their supply, so their supply chain were affected. And there was also areas where servers for national companies were damaged and data was lost. So those national companies were having problems there as well. Additionally, the closure of schools and loss of community facilities meant that parents had to find childcare, and rural communities had a reduced social interaction. Obviously, I think very prominent around the world now. So there are obviously some similarities in what happened there and what's happening because of a pandemic. Right. Slide. Right. So following the events, it changed the way we approached the flood risk. We improved asset management and how we maintained and inspected our critical assets and highway drainage. We identified further areas of regional infrastructure through something called pinch points, where we looked at areas that were isolated due to flooding and those critical points on the network. So how emergency services could better access these and improve those areas in particular. We started using more technology and existing data. So working with our housing company and customer services team, making it easy for residents to contact the team. But also as well, we set up a lot of mobile working for our own team and offices. So they could do a lot more from site and have information we would have historically just had in the office on site. So things like GIS layers and gully cleaning requests and things like that were now mobile instead of being held from one point. So one of the things that also was prominent from the event was the sandbag policy, and the fact that it was probably not the best form of resilience. So we did review how we approached the resilience plan with regards to sandbags as well. So slide. We found that sandbags take time to prepare. They need to be stored, but there may not be enough time to prepare for a surface water event. Sandbags could only be prepared in 2 locations, and delivery from a depot could be problematic because getting from the depot to the flood location may have took time, or there may have been obstructions in the way. We also found that when they were being delivered to one property, other properties were demanding sandbags themselves. Then we found that if residents had rang the council and they then had put a responsibility on the council to get these sandbags to them and put extra pressure on workers, due to the time it took, things like that. So that sometimes it didn't arrive till after the houses had flooded. We also found that there was a lot of problems after the event as well. So how sandbags were disposed of. So we had claims of injury, of people trying to lift them after the event. We had people ringing up asking us to collect them, and there was occasions where some had been fly tipped, and then obviously if it's mixed with water, they became contaminated and do need to be disposed of properly. So the council revised its sandbag policy to not distribute sandbags to residents or businesses. However, we do still sometimes use them on council highway land. What we have looked at instead is a more proactive approach at identifying alternative methods. So we've worked with the EA on demountable barriers along the riverside, and other property level protection measures as well to properties, and advising them on that slide. So we have a lot better partnership working now than what was there in the past. We are now part of something called the Northumbria Integrated Drainage Partnership, where we work closely with the Environment Agency and all local authorities within the Northumbria region. So that's the 5 authorities in Teesside, Durham, Northumberland, Tyne and Wear, and a little bit of Cumbria and North Yorkshire as well. So the partnership actually looks at flooding from all sources, so river flooding, sewer flooding, surface water flooding, and identifies what can be done and delivered through partnership working. We have 2 studies ongoing with the framework, and this is reviewing surface water flooding in the drainage catchment areas and identifying solutions. So it's something I think we are all very proud of, who we've been working with, as a number of schemes have came out as a result of it. It also helps us, because we're joint working, fund things better. So instead of us getting a flood risk assessment done or a study done, in Northumbria Water getting one done separately, we're working together to get a joint one done, and then it helps us deliver grant and aid, and then the Northumbrian Water delivering their schemes and justifying theirs as well. Right, slide. So we also work closely with the other authorities in the Northumbria region. We are all, for those of you who don't work in lead local flood authorities, we are all quite small teams. So sometimes it's nice to, when you've got a problem, have someone to pick up the phone to and have a chat to them about. You find that some problems or problems you have, others have experienced in the past, and it can help you approach a situation differently or find a different solution. But we meet frequently, and we also, it helps us arrange training and CPD sessions together. We work together, we discuss SUD standards and achieving consistent approaches in SUDs and for new development. We also discuss things like funding opportunities, any potential legal issues, as the LLFE or Land Drainage Authority, community engagement and other contacts. So it works well within a region, and I feel like my own colleagues. Next slide, please. So one of the things we have been involved in the region is community engagement, and this is something that is, I think, unique to where we are. So as a regional group, we've worked with the Environment Agency, and we now have 4 community engagement officers employed across the Northumbria region. We have an officer within the 5 Tyne and Wear authorities. So it was someone called Taryn, but it's now Claire. So they work between the 5 authorities, split the time across them, and undertake innovative solutions to go across. It gives us authorities the opportunity to approach risk in a way that we only had volunteers to do it in the past. So to actually go out and proactively do it. The initiative's been very well received by everyone who's been involved. Personally, I think it's a great way of working, and the programme reflects the aspirations of the Environment Agency's National Flood Risk Management Strategy that was consulted on last year. I think it's certainly a great way of working in the future. Right, slide. So some of the work we do, you know, we do a lot of work. They produce a lot of information. They go into schools and they visit residents, businesses, help set up flood plans. And I honestly think that this project probably deserves a presentation of its own. But you know, what is done and learned in one authority might help another authority as well. So there's a lot of information sharing, and so for example, North Tyneside had a car park where it was susceptible to flooding, and some signs were designed to inform residents or inform visitors who may not be familiar with the area. Those signs have been implemented, but they've also been implemented in other boroughs as well. There's been a lot of training for flood wardens and residents, and they've also produced a number of advice leaflets and guides. My two personal favourites are the ones in the picture, which is how to create a garden and a soggy garden guide. So these outline how you can make areas that may have soggy gardens better, and change how you plant things. And obviously that ultimately has an improvement on flood risk itself. Right, slide. Yeah, so another thing we did, we improved the internal organisation. So the flood risk team's grown. We've got technical officers who are responsible for the investigation and asset management side. We also have experienced design engineers within the council in our design team. So the way we're set up now gives us a specific focus on investigating incidents, identifying schemes and how they can be funded, then delivering them. Flooding projects and a medium-term plan as well. We also have a direct labour, so most of our construction work's done it from in-house. There's a lot of pride in that, because the people that are building the schemes are the people that visited on the day as part of their reactive team as well. We've recently been restructured, so the LLFA duties are across different teams. Obviously, with our SUDS officer being in the built natural environment team, he now sits with transport planners, ecologists, landscape architects, and other specialists. Now, when the Flood and Water Management Act came out in 2010, it outlined something called the SUDS approval body, and the setup of that. How that team are working now is very similar to the SAB itself, and it seems to be working quite well. We've also raised awareness to those who work within the council closely with it, providing training sessions for people like councillors and planners, other community officers on flood risk and the responsibilities related to it as well. And we've also identified wider sustainable gains through who we've been dealing with, you know, all the external partners we deal with, and other internal teams. So slide. Right, so there's a couple of examples of this. Mine water, obviously we've seen it as a flooding problem, but where there's a problem, there's an opportunity. So one of the things I've learned from going to mine water seminars is that it can be used as an energy source. We also have a district heating team who've implemented a district heating system elsewhere in the borough. So I put the council's climate change team in touch with the coal authority, and now they are looking at a number of areas where district heating could potentially be used, where we are aware where there is mine water. While it mightn't directly reduce the risk of flooding, it certainly contributes to sustainability and carbon reduction. We've also been looking in more detail with our ecologists and countryside ecology officers with a view towards natural flood risk management. One of the largest employment sites in the region is Tyne Valley, and upstream of that there is a lot of natural land. The Environment Agency are looking at doing a capital project around that area involving natural flood risk management, but we've been looking at additional sites and further engaging with the Environment Agency and the Woodland Trust, seeing how these can be implemented elsewhere in the borough. And we've also worked with urban designers who deliver projects in our urban areas too, so regeneration schemes and things like that, educating them on SUDS principles and how potentially the design of developments, how property level SUDS could be used within those things like permeable paving or green roofs to again reduce that risk of flooding, but also give more sustainable developments as well. One other thing that we're looking at doing is how highway engineers approach design as well. So they may have a more traditional approach to managing water. And recently, this CIWEM event in London, I was speaking to George Warren from Greater London Authority, and he did a presentation on how the Transport for London did some training, and it changed the way they approached highway drainage. So we're hoping to get something like that set up within our region in the coming months. I was hoping it would be done by now, but obviously circumstances change. So slide. So to summarise, key points were, we have got to learn from past events, communicate with our key stakeholders and those with responsibilities in the council. We need to make sure that what we put in is maintained and working. We need to ensure that what we do build in the future does not increase the risk of flooding, and we need to raise awareness where there is a risk of flooding and be prepared for when it does happen. And then we also have to identify potential opportunities and get those in the ground as well. Right, next. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. We
Right.
did get one question during the session in the Q&A from please, and it is, were any integrated flood modeling undertaken to test local flood mitigation measures?
So as part of those initial minor schemes, these are schemes that all cost probably under £20,000 to implement. So those were put in with a view that they were done for the short term, and we would look into things in the long term. We did run them through micro drainage and things like that, but we are now in the process now where through the Northumbria Integrated Drainage Partnership and through the EA medium term plan, we are looking in more detail at the modelling and predicting the floods. So last year, the council actually invested in InfoWorks to develop this further, and we've been working with framework consultants to get these done, because anytime we draw down money, we have to have a robust business case, and as part of that business case, we need detailed modelling that explains different scenarios as well. So it is a key part of finding those longer term solutions for significant schemes.
Great.
Right.
Thank you. And we just got another one. What do private sector homeowners do when they get floods if their insurance does not protect them?
So they, from personal experience, they lose out quite a lot. It's something. It's happened a couple of times in the borough, but I'd like to keep conversations with them a bit confidential, if you know what I mean. And I know obviously it's something that, following recent floods, particularly Storm Desmond and Storm Frank, there is flood re, and there's more options now for residents that do flood. I mean, personally, I actually live in a house in flood zone 2. You can see the river from my house. So it is something that, I feel like, because I am aware of that situation, we always check the small print when we are buying our home insurance. And I know my neighbours have the same approach as well.
Great, thank you. Are you happy to take a few more?
I can take a few more, yes.
Do you find that residents feel that they won't flood again as a result of the mitigation that has been implemented, or do they have a better perception of risk afterwards?
So again, with the community engagement officers, we are going around and we are explaining that these are resilience schemes and not prevention schemes. So they are all designed to particular standards. You know, and I'm aware, obviously, that the recent events in the winter, mitigation schemes that have been put in didn't necessarily protect all the properties they hoped to. And I think when we do approach this, we're still aware that there is a risk of flooding, but there is a risk, you know, we want to reduce it significantly, but you know, anything you do is never bulletproof. So again, the help of the community engagement officers working with our maintenance teams as well, that helps inform people and reduce the risk, because you can put anything in, but if it's not maintained, it won't work.
Great, thank you.
Right.
Wow, we're getting lots of questions now.
Oh.
Have you unlocked any innovative or less obvious sources of funding, and should insurance companies contribute?
I don't know about insurance companies. I can. It's something I've never really thought of, but it's something that there's possibly legs out there for. Innovative sources of funding. What we have actually done is, when we have been looking at taking forward a flood defence grant and aid scheme, which was actually the one for where that video was, part of the land to the west of it was allocated for housing. It was owned by a landowner who was going to build housing. We met with this landowner and we said, look, we'd like to use part of your land for a flood defence scheme. Would you sell it to us cheaply, you know, or give it to us? But what actually happened was it accelerated how quickly the development progressed, and they actually constructed the basin for us, and it's now part of our adopted highways. So while it's not we've been given money, we've had a contribution with the construction of that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I was thinking if we maybe stick to another couple of questions and then move to the next presentation. So a couple more questions, then we can come back to these at the end, if that's all right. Just trying to...
Yeah, that sounds perfect. Looks like everybody's excited about the content.
Yeah, definitely.
Pick one that to talk about. Is a sandbag policy a nationwide policy or just for your local authority? So
sandbag policies vary from authority to authority. So how we protect properties it's through our resilience planning team, not necessarily us as the lead local flood authority, but we engage we engage with the resilience team to make sure that what is being done is something we all agree on and feel is the best way to go forward.
Sounds great. I think then we will pause Q&A just for a little bit.
Right.
We'll keep all of the questions with us, and if we're not able to get all of the questions answered during the session, we're more than happy to maybe answer those offline and provide those resources on the website. Yeah,
brilliant.
Great, thank you very much, Carl. Brilliant. So in the absence of a live audience, I'll clap for you for that. Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much. If you haven't already spotted in the chat, I've posted the link to the article with the video, which I didn't manage to get the audio for, so that should be in there if you haven't already seen it.
Right.
So thank you very much, Carl. Steve, Shelley, are you okay to go straight in? Do you want to have a quick break, or are you happy to get started straight away?
I'm okay to start. Shelley, you okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, so this presentation is on the Yorkshire Property Flood Resilience Pathfinder project, and I'll duck out again, hand straight over to you. Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, you see it okay.
I'm trying to share my...
It's going.
Right, can everyone see the presentation there?
Yeah, we see it. You just need to go in presentation mode.
Excellent. Right, okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for all logging on and joining us today. Fantastic to have so many people online for this presentation, and thanks to Carl for a presentation earlier. Lots of things there that are really important to me as a lead local flood authority flood risk manager. I'm Steve Wragg. I'm the City of York Council Flood Risk Manager. and I'm the project lead for the Yorkshire Flood Resilience Pathfinder project. Shelley Evans from JBA Consulting will be sharing this presentation with me. I'll take us through the first few slides, and then Shelley will take us through some of the current outputs and findings that we've got on this project. And then I'll come back in again at the end to explain what the next period of the project will be, and some of the things that we're having to constantly reimagine and rethink given the existing situation that we're in now, but also how we can best target people out there. And it'd be really good to get input from the however many people we've got now, 190 people out there, either via the questions, and obviously we'll pick up those questions and give our thoughts to those at the end of the presentation. But separately to this, if anything we say as part of this Pathfinder project resonates with anything you're doing within your areas or your part of the sector or part of the industry, please get in touch with us. I'd love to develop new and different ways of working with this Pathfinder, and that's what a Pathfinder project's all about, really. So the background to the project: the Yorkshire Flood Resilience Pathfinder is one of 3 DEFRA commissioned projects. So the Pathfinder projects, an expression of interest went out early last summer for 3 Pathfinder projects to look at trying to build the awareness of and the acceptance of and the uptake of property flood resilience. What is property flood resilience? I think that's one of the problems that we have really in the industry. Is we've called it many things over the years: property level protection, property level resilience. Property flood resilience is now the given term for what we're talking about here. So it's property level protection and resilience measures. So it could be hard floors, it could be raised electrics, it could be different plasterboard constructions. It can be door guards and air brick covers. It can be sump pumps, or it could be curtilage measures, something around the boundary wall of the property potentially. It's all of these different measures that will make the property more resistant to flooding. But probably what we really want to all strive for is a resilient property that's able to be back on its feet and usable in a very quick time after a flood event. As a concept, it's been a really difficult thing to push over the years. We've seen a move from flood defence. I joined the Environment Agency in the late 90s, and we were all about flood defence, hard flood defence measures, whether they be flood walls, flood embankments, and people wanted to prevent flooding at all costs. We moved to a flood risk management regime where we accept we can't remove and reduce all flood impacts, and that we have to talk about resilience and acceptance of flooding and actually adapt to the consequences of it. And obviously now we've seen the climate agenda move forward, and the whole movement around climate change mitigation. The climate change adaptation is really important. You know, we've already got the impacts of climate change upon us. We can't remove that completely, even if we stop producing any sort of carbon, you know, from this day onwards. So adaptation and property flood resilience in the concept of this project is really important. So DEFRA and the Environment Agency really wanted 3 projects that would look to build and develop the awareness and acceptance of resilience. And this came off the back of the Bonfield Review, which followed the 2015 floods and the Flood Resilience Roundtable, which was a range of different groups that looked at flood insurance, property flood resilience, and a range of other issues. And this is one of the projects that's come out from it. And what DEFRA wanted was 3 Pathfinders that would work across the wider regional flood and coastal committee areas. So for ourselves here, it's the Yorkshire Regional Flood and Coastal Committee, which is 14 lead local flood authorities across South, West, North and East Yorkshire. And they wanted a project that would work across the whole of that boundary. So when the expression of interest came out, I worked with the lead local flood authority managers across the other 14 LLFA, and we started to discuss how we could take forward an initiative that would actually raise the awareness of property flood resilience. We already had a really good piece of work happening across in the East Riding and Hull, the Living with Water projects, and we developed some of the ideas and ideals from that into a set of measures that could be implemented across the whole of Yorkshire. One of the other difficult things of the expression of interest that DEFRA raised was that there needed to be a physical demonstration to the somewhere where people and professionals and potential installers, surveyors, etc., can actually go and interact with property flood resilience measures, materials that could be for future learning and developments, and all of these side of things. And again, the Living with Water project was a really important aspect. They're doing a lot of work there with Hull University and the Wilberforce College site to actually develop a physical demonstration sites. In addition to that, one of the learnings that DEFRA had from previous Pathfinder projects was to get project evaluation set up at a very early stage so that we could show that we're getting the most impact from the desired aim of that Pathfinder and ultimately the funding that government is putting into that Pathfinder. So the national evaluators were set up, so that was Wragg Consult and RPA. They were set up early in the project, but then local evaluators had to be brought on board by the 3 Pathfinder projects. So for the Yorkshire Pathfinder project, that's Jeremy Ben Associates and the ICAS Commission. So if anyone's not aware of ICAS, is the Integrated Catchment Solutions Programme, which is led by Leeds University, but a fantastic initiative that's Leeds University, Sheffield and York universities, plus links into other universities slightly further afield. And it's a NERC funded project over 5 years, and they're looking to synthesize and adapt and repurpose existing research to continue climate learnings, and also put in place different ways and methods and proposals for further work and studies. So ICAS were ideally placed because they're already in the 2nd year of that program to actually provide some of the evaluation for this project. So I'm extremely lucky that we've got ICAS and JBA working as the project evaluators at the beginning and the end of this project, but also throughout the project, so we can assist how we take things forward. And then the project, the key thing that we've got as 3 project officers. Slide showing that next. After this one, 3 project officers who have been recruited into the project to actually take all the various tools and training and things that they're getting in place out into communities, out into professional partners, whether that's planners, whether that's management, whether or not it's surveyors, the insurance sector. And they will really spend time on the ground working with people to try to raise the understanding and awareness of property flood resilience, but also try to get people into a space where they actually accept and understand that people have to do something themselves to actually make the property resilient to flooding. It can't always be something that's done to them. It has to be something that they have to consider for themselves. And these were the 2 main project aims, as you can see on screen there. And this is the wider project team. So City of York Council team, there myself and Emily, Alana and Lauren are the 3 project officers that I've just alluded to. The national team, RPA and RAB, as I said before, and EA and DEFRA, and the Property Flood Resilience Round Table is extremely important. The steering group for the project has Flood Re on board and Aviva and others from that wider PFR Round Table. So it's an extremely important project going forward for some of the things that many people on this call might have seen are out there at the minute, a review of flood insurance, etc., etc. The national strategy that the Environment Agency is currently developing. The JBA Pathfinder team there in the bottom box is Shelley, Peter May, Thompson Sayers working very closely with Shelley and Emily. And on the left there, you can see the ICAS Pathfinder team, which is led by Ben Rabb and Duncan Fife, and a range of ICAS academics as the impact translation people on the project. To bring learnings from other projects, not just flood risk management projects, but other projects about how we can make sure we have the most impact and reach out to people around the Yorkshire area. I'll leave Shelley now to take over and take you through the next slides to identify the evidence that's emerging from the work that's done to date. So Shelley, are you there?
I am.
Thank you.
So, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Yeah, there's a bit of background in my end. Okay, so during this session then, we're going to be looking at obviously the evidence that's been emerging from, well, work package 1 we're calling it. So the whole project has been divided into 4 work packages, which I'll be able to go through that in a minute with you. But we're just coming to the end of the interviewing and the surveys. Surveys have not finished yet. There will be a link throughout. So if you wanted to jot it down, and if you live, work or operate in Yorkshire, we'll be really, really grateful for you to help shape the project. It's your time to have a voice in this. So with the evidence that's emerging now, we've kind of, and the qualitative and quantitative research that's come through it, we've got 3 points that we're going to shape this session around, and that is what potential barriers exist to the uptake of PFR measures, and that's across all stakeholder groups, but I'll tell you about them in a minute. How can PFR take-up be enhanced and a positive behaviour change towards measures encouraged? And then how should we then do demonstration projects and educational events and awareness programmes to fit in with those stakeholders across Yorkshire? Bearing in mind that how you would demonstrate and the problems and barriers that a resident might have would be completely different to those that work in the insurance industry or those within the risk management authorities. So do you want to go to the next slide, Steve? Oh, go back one if you can. So what I thought I'd do with this is a really complex mind map, and it was developed by Peter May and Paul O'Hare from Manchester Met Uni, I believe in like 2012. And what it was at the time, it was just showing you how complex PFR is. And the reason why I like it is because all the stakeholders now in 2020, they're all on there somewhere. And, you know, there might be even some new challenges and barriers today. But then the barriers, if you followed this mind map, just show you how complex the whole decision process is. And it's not something that I brought on really to discuss, but it was just as a visual aid, really, just to show you that it's absolutely massive. So this project really has been tested all of us to make sure that the right stakeholders and everyone's got a voice, and you know, it can only get better if everybody gets involved and we accept that these are many of the barriers. So if you go to the next one. Okay, so the work packages, how it's all going to fit together. We've divided it into 4 work packages. Work package 1 is the one that I'm project managing. If you go to the next one, Steve. And this is the one I'm project managing on behalf of ICASP for. Remember, this isn't about PFR, who's got it and what they've got. This is really a behavioural study. It's finding out what are the barriers to uptake. So obviously we've had to design a qualitative and quantitative research programme, which takes into account all the different stakeholders, because we need a benchmark to know what their barriers are right from the word go. And then when we've found out what their barriers are, their individual barriers and so on, or as a actual stakeholder group, then we can sort of help design and deliver what's needed to overcome them. You'll notice there at the bottom of the screen, there is a link. I know you can't click onto it, but if you wanted to jot it down and you wanted to take part, if you do live, work, operate in Yorkshire, we'd be really grateful. So if you go to the next slide, Steve, I can take you through the stakeholder groups. And how we've done it is we've divided them into 4 different groups. We've got households, businesses, communities, and that includes landlords, residents, flood groups. Obviously, the reason why we've had to split these down is because the survey is absolutely huge, because we've had to design it to fit everyone. So how we've done it is, when you go onto the survey initially, you will, whatever you pick, whether, because you might live, work and operate in Yorkshire, so whatever you decide to go, whichever group you put yourself in, that's the route that you'll take throughout the survey. So the next stakeholder group is the property, oh sorry, go back one. It's a property trade, building suppliers, outlets, developers, maintenance contractors, and so on. Then we've got stakeholder group 3, which is about the financial influencers. So that's your insurance industry, investors, mortgage lenders, and so on. And then we've got the flood risk management authorities, and that is the EA, LFAs, water companies, drainage companies, and so on. Okay, so if you want to go to the next one. So, yeah, so following stakeholder group project research, which is really the position we're in now, we're going to extract the barriers to uptake and the recommendations, really, which I'll show you later on, from the different stakeholder groups. Some of these, obviously, we've done, we've got the survey, and that's ongoing to the end of this month. But we've actually conducted really in-depth interviews with many of the LFAs and some, you know, really influential insurance industry experts, and the reason is for that is because that really is adding that extra bit of depth to this, where we can find really pick at it and get them to answer a few questions and tell us what they think, because this is really about the stakeholders, and I think that's what the key is to listen to what they're saying and find ways of overcoming it. Okay, if you go to the next one. So then what we're doing now, when we've recommended, when we've took all the recommendations or the barriers out of the survey and the interviews, we'll put together some messages, and we're doing this with the ICASP academics and their academic team. They're social scientists, and they will, between the industry experts and the academia, and public, private and academia, if you wanted to say that, sectors, it works really well, because we're all looking at the same project from different angles, and that's why it's been really refreshing working with this particular team. And what the messages that we put together will be, say for example, somebody from the insurance industry have said, this is my barrier. This is what I think the barrier to the insurance industry is about PFR. They might even say what I would do about it, but you know, sometimes they did or sometimes they didn't. But what we've done is we've interpreted it, and then we've thought about what can be done about it. Sometimes it's not about reinventing the wheel. You know, a lot of some brilliant things are out there. They've just been forgotten about. Or they're out there and they just don't have the voice. So the idea is that not only do the project officers that are a critical part of work package 2 and 3, they are there to design, signpost, create anything that can help overcome the barriers. So work package 2, this will be undertaken by Lauren, Alana and Emily, and it's about collating the existing educational awareness resources regarding flood risk awareness, because it could be as simple as people don't even know that they're at flood risk or don't accept it. And then
from there, developing materials that are required. This could be workshops, presentations, it could be a website, a depository for all the information. It could be signpost documents saying, oh, this is out there, this is where you should go. So, yeah, and they're going to be working with some local partners as part of that, obviously the Living with Water initiative. And there is plans to build a physical demonstration site at Wilberforce College. So lots of exciting, creative and very necessary things are going to be going on in Work Package 2. They're already doing it in parallel to ourselves, and that's why this collaborative team, it's been really good working together so we can get the best out of it. Work Package 3 then, that's about the delivery. So we've now found out what the barriers are, we've designed and created what we think will overcome them, and now it's about delivering them to the people. And obviously we've got quite a few challenges, should we say. First of all, the project went over a time period where Yorkshire was suffering, never mind the rest of the country, with horrible flooding. So this created something in the project where we had to be really sensitive. We couldn't be sending emails and bombarding flood groups with, can you fill this survey in, or can you do an interview? Because obviously these people were all either in the middle of helping people in a flood incident, or then going through the recovery, and people were tired, and you're very mindful that you don't want to add to the stress, even though we're very conscious that this is an important project. So, and now we're faced with obviously a world pandemic, which we obviously didn't plan for, and not on this sort of scale anyway. So the project officers now have had to look at it with engagement on a lockdown period and after lockdown period. Bearing in mind that even after the lockdown period, there's probably going to be some form of social distancing. It's not going to be, going up to the local village hall, well, although I can't imagine it, and everybody intermingling next month. So it does give a few more challenges that we've had to overcome. So that's led to the decision for an online PFR tool. This is going to be a depository, but also a signpost to certain websites or, experts in industry that can help with certain things. And it's important too about the social media aspect, because so many people are on Twitter, so many people are on LinkedIn, and it's an ideal place to not only remind people that you're there, because you've got to, and I also know that one day it was all about the flooding, and literally the next day it was all about the COVID. And yeah, of course, that has to happen. But unfortunately, some of the people that are now in lockdown are living in flooded out houses, and it's absolutely horrendous for them. So, we want to make sure that we do keep this going during this period. So yeah, during the lockdown, it's limited the engagement that could be happening, but it's all about keeping spreading that word, using social media, reminding people that we're still around. After lockdown, well, who knows, hopefully it will be getting out there, rolling our sleeves up, meeting and greeting and getting into schools and, going to breakfast meetings with insurance and so on. Certainly the Wilberforce College Learning Centre and everything, that we really hope to get that up and running, and I'm sure that will all happen. And then I'll go to the next one. And then Work Package 4, so this won't be until after the new year, but it's about what has changed, and we might not know some of it straight away. because it could be that the people that have recently had PFR or got some opinions on it, they might now have PFR fitted as part of, they might have been flooded out and be part of a bigger scheme or so on, but then haven't used it. So the barriers are not really changed as such. But this is about going back and repeating the qualitative and quantitative research, finding out what was impact of the project, evaluating where people stand, whether they've their perceptions have changed, and I think that's the key. It's their perception to either flood risk or PFR. It's whether the design and delivery over that period have really reached people, which I'm sure it will. So if we go to the next slide. Okay, so I've put these two together. These are the 2 points that I mentioned earlier on. And the questions are, or the points are, what potential barriers exist to the uptake of PFR measures across all the stakeholder groups? And then we've got, how can PFR take-up be enhanced and a positive behaviour change towards PFR measures encouraged? And this is from people that have it on their home to people that have never been flooded but work in an industry where they might have a say over things. It could be that you're risk management or insurance or something. You don't necessarily have to have been flooded to be part of this study. So if we go to the next slide. Okay, so what are the barriers? So I'm going to take you through some tables over the next few slides. And the tables were designed to capture the stakeholder interviews and surveys, and we've categorised them by stakeholder groupings. And how we've done this is we've gone through now the survey platform, and we've analysed the data that's come in. So we've done that in two parts. When the survey originally started, we did a batch then up until the 17th of April. And then from the 17th of April up until last week, we've done another batch. And then we'll do it again in another couple of weeks. And at the end, when we actually close the survey, the academics at ICASP, they'll pull out some of the trends, but obviously we can't do that at the moment. We're still in the survey process, and that will be finding out with them nifty tools on the survey platform, so many % of people said this and so many, but I'm looking forward to seeing that aspect myself. Yeah, so basically this table here, I've plucked this straight out of the surveys. And this is household, businesses, community groups, landlords, residents and flood groups. And I've chosen two. And how it works is the survey, the participants said whether or not they had a barrier or an issue. And that's highlighted green on here. It might be that the survey feedback from the participant actually said, this is my barrier, but also this is how I think that we should, what we should do about it. In this case, they've just stated a straight up barrier. The Pathfinder, the next two columns that are in white, that is the commentary of what we think they're talking about, so to speak, and sort of the initial options, interventions that you could take, and where the project officers during work package 2 and 3, they'll be looking at this and how to develop this further. So barrier, this particular barrier, a tenant of property not agreeing to use PFR measures provided by landlord due to lack of confidence in the measures. So obviously the landlord can't be present at every home if he has lots of them during a flood incident. But so he's invested in them, but the tenant doesn't want to use them for whatever reason. It could be that they are not familiar with them. It could be that they are worried, will they work? You know, I don't know how to fit them. I struggle with mobility. It could be an endless amount, but it just shows you this particular one that some landlords do, you know, put PFR on private houses, and sometimes, you know, they've invested in it, but it doesn't mean that it will work on the day because they're not actually putting them on. So in this particular one, an intervention would be an opportunity for exploring the use of PFR. It could be that do we look at, or does the landlord look at putting it in contracts that they should be, if it's part of the house, needs maintaining, needs putting in, but then would they need training to be able to not only put them on, but to the aftercare afterwards. So yeah, that's looking particularly at how we can do that. People would like to, the next one, people would like to consider or implement PFR but don't know where to seek advice or assistance. And again, this could be a simple, quick win for the project officers. It could be that the depository of the website they're creating directs them, signposts them to the blue pages on the National Flood Forum website. It could be that, you know, they have a PFR helpline. It could be lots of it. It could be that they design like a demonstration or a video or whatever that can help. So, and here the options are: key aim of the Pathfinder is to provide the tools that are needed, encourage risk management authorities to accept PFR, and have it as part of a toolbox. You know, development of further resources such as blue pages, should be able to direct them to the property protection advisor, the code of practice, all these online platforms, and all these information sources. Okay, so if we click to the next one. So this one's from the property trade, building supplies outlets. And this one, this particular participant is saying insurance companies only paying to reinstate property following a flood event and not allowing for resilience work. So here, this is where the awareness, resilience benefits doesn't reach individual property claims. So a lot of insurance industries are doing like for like, reinstatement at the time to install resilience. There's lots of issues like this coming up, and you know, could it be the engagement with insurance industry who manage claims? Those could they be updated more on PFR? We did find that, which I'll speak about in the next one, that some people in the insurance industry, they're just not aware that much on it or not familiar enough, so don't think about the wider PFR options. And then we've got here lack of people able to provide specialist building, survey and PFR design, partly due to the liability associated with it. And this particular person is said to, they should promote and work with the RACS training programme. You know, again, this is straight from the stakeholder itself that said this. The importance, though, is raising awareness of the PFR like framework, for example. The EA created the framework, vetted the people on them. So, you know, it certainly gives it should give a bit more confidence to those people that are able to use the framework for schemes like lead local authorities or the EA, but also it's knowing that it's there. We did a scheme for private commercial property, for example, in Yorkshire, and although they can't use the framework as such, by knowing who was on the framework and that the EA had been through this whole process of vetting these particular surveyors and suppliers and installers, it did give them confidence to be able to go to these in a private capacity. So if we go to the next one. Okay, so this particular one is for the financial influencers, and he hasn't said there's a barrier, but he has recommended, said the only way to move the dial is to make the insurance industry recognise PFR and therefore reduce the cost of insurance cover, and to demonstrate the financial benefits of PFR through statistics. And this, if I remember right, this particular insurance, we did the interview with this insurance company, and they said they actually want figures. They can't just change anything, it's too complex. They need the facts and the figures and statistics to show, and then maybe the insurance industry will move with the PFR industry. But yeah, ways of intervention could be encourage DEFRA PFR roundtable tasks to share their work on data modelling with the wider insurance, and the EA maybe to collate the outcomes of PFR resistance schemes to date. And then we've got here project managers. This is, again, the insurance industry have said this themselves, that project managers for claims and their contractors have lack of awareness to recognise PFR, and again just replace like for like, which links really with what I've just said in the last one. So, you know, should then that we be adapting our training and awareness program to the insurance industry so they know what's out there? You know, that sort of information can highlight and raise awareness to what they could do. So, oh, excuse me. Can you go to the next one, Steve? Actually, you might need to, I'm going to have a little cough. Do you want to carry on, Steve?
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, this next one was around the property, the flood professionals, so the risk management authorities, so LLFA and EA, etc. This is one that many people will be aware of. Terraces of houses experiencing flooding, various PFR schemes have been offered in the past, but trying to get everyone to take up. PFR is often difficult, and unless you complete the whole terrace, then the measures would really not be effective. The commentary around that was around an opportunity to emphasise the importance, engage with the whole terrace, and some of the things that are under the PFR framework, where you actually try to bring everyone together, bring in providers, do showcase events where you illustrate the products, so people can touch them, feel them, and understand what they are and what they do. So rather than a piecemeal approach, some of the grants that have happened from the past, government grants, etc., it's actually delivered more as a project delivery sort of way, either via the PFR framework or something similar. And there's been a range of Yorkshire schemes where that's already happened. So some of the learning from that and try to develop some of those ideas. Are you coming back in, Shelley, or do you want me to continue?
That's all right. There is just, I don't normally have a problem with talking, but
There you go.
So then, yeah, this one, lack of aftercare, ongoing support and deployment. Have you said that one?
No.
Okay. So this particular person has said there's an opportunity here to examine the PFR aftercare in a flood alleviation scheme, and whether increased resources in the handover process have been successful and resulted in residents being more confident in its use. And what I found on a lot of PFR schemes that I've run for the EA and so on, is that it really is critical to get the community on board with it, because right from the beginning with the engagement and getting their confidence in and you know, their input and the buy-in to it. It's not just that, it's about them working together, because if you've got a terrace of houses and you share a suspended floor with them, you can go on holiday, and the person next door to you, if they don't know to put your PFR up, it's just going to come under the floor and into your home. So the idea about the confidence of these communities, it's really important right from the offset, but even more so in the handover process, that they know how to use it, that they feel confident using it, and they know that, you know, the aftercare, how important it is, how to maintain it, and where, you know, Joe Bloggs next door is actually keeping his barriers and how to put them up. So yeah, if this could be measured on a flood alleviation scheme during one, to see what that sort of engagement was like, I think that would be a really good thing. So with this, product suppliers should be required to provide clear instructions on use, storage and maintenance. And generally that does happen. In some cases, it can be just, some people just need more input, more training and more care afterwards. It could be that there was a PFR helpline that was done so long after that you've had your property flood resilience measures put in. It could be that an audit is done to make sure that, not a post-installation audit is what we do after we've done a scheme, to make sure that our recommendations are fit for purpose afterwards, and are, you know, they've all been taken into consideration. But more that, you know, if the council or so on have put a scheme in, should they then be, you know, should there be a check done on them? Should they be, they are fit for purpose a year later? Should it be like an MOT? You know, there's lots of these things, and that links to some of the things that were coming out about the insurance industry, which is very complex. But you know, some of the comments were, well, we have an MOT on the car. Why can't there be an MOT on PFR? Well, the fact is that you would have to set up a massive amount of new legislation, new contracts, new everything to enable people to go out and do an audit on PFR. But PFR needs to be made sure that it is fit for purpose. Because I've seen with my own eyes people that have got their flood protection barriers numbered and kept in good condition and in the garage and in a good space. And then on the other hand, I've been there and seen, you know, a flood barrier being used as a skateboard in the back for a skateboard ramp in the back garden by the kids. So there is an absolute clear difference between you having it and you treating it as part of your home and in good working condition. Okay, so we want to go to the next one. Can you go to the next one, Steve? Okay, so I'll hand back over to Steve now, because this is mostly now about his work package 2 and 3 and how it can be delivered in Yorkshire, and what we can do to develop new ways to do that.
Thank you, Shelley. I'm aware of the time and the amount of people on this call, so I'll canter through this fairly quickly. But as I said before, please contact us. If there are any projects that you're working on across Yorkshire, definitely, but even elsewhere, you know, we'd be really keen to learn from other initiatives that are out there and how we can adapt and change the things that we're doing to listen to and understand the best practices out there. And also, I didn't say at the beginning, but the other 2 Pathfinders was the Oxford-Cambridge Pathfinder, which is being led by the Northamptonshire County Council, and then the Southwest Pathfinder, which has been led by Cornwall Council. So, you know, there may be other Pathfinders that are more local to where some people are on the call. But do speak to us. We'd be really keen to learn from you. Keeps doing this. There we go. For work package 2, which is the design and development of the various measures that we're going to take to try to influence people out there on property flood resilience. We want to develop activities that work with all, support all, not confuse or undermine the messaging. And that's a really important thing to consider. There's been a whole range of flood roles and flood actors that Carl kind of touched on quite a few in his presentation, the role of the lead local flood authority. You've got the local resilience fora out there, which are developing flood warning strategies. You've got all the different risk management authorities the Environment Agency, you've got lead local flood authorities, you've got internal drainage boards, etc. All trying to populate the same space and all trying to raise understanding and awareness of climatic impacts and flood alleviation and flood resilience. It's very easy in that sort of context to be seen as maybe overstepping other people's roles, maybe watering down or diluting the messaging that they're putting out. So it's really important in all of these things that the project officers are developing, that they're things done with our partners, with our LLFA peers, with the Environment Agency, not done to them. And that's a really important mantra that we've really utilised as we started to develop these things. And I think at the core of our Pathfinder, and the 3 Pathfinders across the country have approached this in slightly different ways, but the real core of our project was that we had 3 project officers brought on board very early in the project, working alongside Shelley and ICAS to actually develop, these materials and these methods of awareness and understanding. And in the work package 3 part of the project, which would have ran from April this year to April next year, there's somewhere in the region of about 600 hours of 600 days, that should be, not hours, of learning across the Yorkshire RFCC area. That could be face-to-face meetings and discussions with planning development officers on day 1 in Calderdale. Maybe the next day they spend the day with some of the local flood groups. Maybe the day after it's talking to highways professionals about how they can consider the work that they do, and maybe insurance brokers on the next day. Really learning from the local trades and professionals and risk management authorities out there what opportunities exist and how they would like us to work with them to actually develop an understanding and awareness of flood resilience. But clearly our programs had to change. Clearly we've had to adapt and really rule out any face-to-face awareness sessions at this moment in time. And that's been a challenge, as you can imagine. Work package 3 is the delivery of that, as I've just alluded to. And the planned approaches were face-to-face awareness sessions, community events. Physical demonstration centre was a Wilberforce College site. Physical demonstration model and rigs. So we've started the design and procurement process for some portable models that you can pour water in, and you can see how PFR on a model house will keep the property dry or resilient to flooding. So things that people can touch and interact with and actually feel and understand what those measures are doing, because I think it's very difficult sometimes to understand the concepts of flood resilience or property flood resilience. And also mobile test rigs, so utilising full size or maybe scaled down model versions of door guards, air brick covers, etc. And the ideals that we've got around that is to put them in public accessible places. So it could be in the entrance hall to the council's drop-in centres or community centres or libraries. It could be something that we tour around and take to the demonstrations. And that would roll around the region as we go through the year of awareness sessions. Again, and the real idea of that is where people can touch it and feel it. We're already seeing some of that from the survey results, that people don't understand or certainly don't have enough knowledge of what PFR is and how it can work. What the PFR framework has done is introduce opportunity to actually invite different installers and providers to a local centre where people can actually go out and see those products and actually understand what they feel like. Online training, websites, and online video content was all part of the original plan of the project. Those 3 parts had to take even more importance at this moment in time, as you can imagine. The bullet points above that are things that we can't really actively do at this time. So we're working on some really interesting online training tools, using various providers, learning from other initiatives, things like the Iron Calderdale work and the Living with Water projects. We're looking at online video content. Ed Barsley is working with us at the moment. We've not developed that into something that's you know, we're not formally taking forward at this moment in time. We've got some really interesting opportunities there, which we're really keen to take forward. And the website really as a bit of a landing page, as a signpost of other things that are out there to host some of that video content, the online training, but really try to pull things together. But we really want to try and do that in a more interesting and an informative way than maybe some things that have come to pass previously. Lots of challenges in doing that, but hopefully we can make good impact with that sort of content. And as I said before, your input can steer this. Clearly COVID and coronavirus COVID-19 at the moment is impacting the way we can do that physical face-to-face interaction. So please do talk to us, use the question and answer after this, or go with the contact details that we provided after this, so please get in touch. We've also found, and I think Shelley alluded to this earlier on, this project existed not just in the period of a global pandemic, but also off the back of some major flood events in Yorkshire. Last summer, let's not forget last summer and the flooding across the more rural aspects of North Yorkshire and the Dales, the areas that were affected across North Yorkshire were extreme, and flood recovery has taken a long time to get on top of some of that because of the remoteness of some of that impact. November flooding in South Yorkshire and West Yorkshire and some parts of the Central York area and above. But obviously what we saw in February and March of this year across again South Yorkshire, West Yorkshire, York was affected, and also across in East Yorkshire. I mean, that really changes people's views as to how they want to engage with property flood resilience in general. You know, communities want to see a response. There's always a causation for a flood. I've worked across all the major floods in Yorkshire and the north since 1998, and people always want to pin the issue on something that happened. A penstock was opened, a dam failed, a defence failed. It's very, very difficult sometimes to really get across the concepts of, you know, the enormity of the rainfall that's then led to the impacts that people have seen. So sometimes after a flood event, and we're seeing it across the region now, is people, they don't want to think about their own resilience. They don't want to think about their own flood, the acceptance of the flood and how they can take measures themselves. They want to see a response, they want to see something happening, and that's completely understandable. Carl touched on the emotional impacts that floods have, and we've certainly seen it in York across a great number of flood events. But we do need to work together on this. We can't solve it on our own. You know, we can't continue to build bigger and bigger and bigger flood defences that sever our communities from the natural environments. We do need to make the places where we live more resilient to flooding. So PFR's got a really important role to play. I think insurance was one of the things that was brought up earlier, and it's important to understand, and I'm happy to take any questions on insurance and PFR after this. The role of the insurance and recovery process after floods happen is really important with this. And things are changing where PFR is starting to be accepted and understood better by the insurance industry. So hopefully we'll see some good things come out of that. So please do contact us if there's anything where you would like us to consider, work with you, or just, you know, get a better understanding of what you do, and if it can help us, we'd be really keen to understand that better. I think that was our last slide. Yes. Thank you very much. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Steve and Shelley. That was really interesting, and I hope that we can help you promote this project even more. One thing I want to do just before we jump into questions is say thank you to all of you for your talk today. It was really, really insightful and interesting, and I really appreciate that we've had the opportunity, even though COVID has presented so many challenges for us, to be able to transition all of these branch events online and get such a wider audience and really get our message to, you know, people from all around the world. So thank you so much for being a part of that. And thank you to all the attendees who have come today. We do have a short little survey at the end of this webinar that will just pop up automatically in Zoom, and it's optional obviously, but we'd appreciate your feedback because we're looking to see how we can grow this program and support you even more. So thank you. And with that, I'll jump into a couple questions that we got. One person asked, interested in what will happen to the project after the Pathfinder funding has ended. Will the project continue beyond the work packages and lead to longer term changes? And if so, what?
One of the things that that DEFRA wanted, certainly from the physical demonstration aspects of the Pathfinder, they wanted some kind of sustainable delivery mechanism afterwards. So certainly the physical demonstration site, the Wilberforce College sites, that will be something that will continue to be delivered by the Living with Water team, which is well established over there in East Yorkshire and Hull City Council and Yorkshire Water and Environment Agency. So we'll certainly see a sustainable longevity to that. We've developed this scheme under the banner of the RFCC, the Yorkshire RFCC, and we have an initiative where we look to develop training and awareness programs for all risk management authorities that are part of the RFCC family. So we will certainly continue to develop the materials and host the website, etc., as part of the RFCC banner and initiative. Obviously, a hell of a lot of the learning will go back into Head Office Environment Agency and DEFRA and help steer the future of PFR in that regard. But the local awareness and understanding will hopefully be able to keep that going via those two sustainable routes.
Great, thank you. And was conflict of interest from various stakeholders a barrier, and how was that accounted for?
I think with this, oh, I'm sorry, I was reading the one above that, which were resident.
Sorry, I skipped around a little bit just to confuse you.
Oh no, that's fine then. That's fine. Conflict of interest from various stakeholders, the barrier. To be honest, for the survey, we've left that open to if you live, work or operate in Yorkshire. And obviously, as I said before, some people live and work in Yorkshire, may not have flooded themselves, but may work in an industry where they are, as part of their job, to know or deal with people that may have been flooded. I think for this particular study, they, when they went onto the survey, they made a decision themselves based on what route they wanted to follow, and then just did it. So, and you know, they're not double counted. If you've gone if you put yourself down as a resident, or if you put yourself down as working for, you know, the EA, you will follow that one. So I think conflict of interest was more that they made that decision. And when we spoke to them during the interview process, we spoke to them as in the job that they are in. So, oh, the screen's gone. Yeah, so we spoke to them in that capacity. So again, they might have lived in Yorkshire, but they were answering it from, I work for this insurance company and this is the barriers I'm having as somebody that works in that sector. So I hope that's answered it.
Thank you. So I'll go back to the one that I skipped over. Were residents offered passive measures where they don't need to be present to install the PFR measures?
Again, this wasn't really about it's really about people's barrier to uptake. So nobody was offered anything, but I can say from personal experience of leading PFR schemes across the country, that when you do a survey, as a surveyor myself, when you do a survey on a house, it is always geared to that particular house, that particular type of flooding, and the recommendations would be, if you were doing a survey on a home and you knew that somebody had mobility difficulties, that's always taken into consideration, for example, with flood door, which works passively rather than a flood barrier. But for this particular survey, it wasn't something, nobody was offered anything as such.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe we'll have time for one or two more. The lack of interest and engagement never ceases to amaze. How would you look to change this? And is there a chance of securing funding to save the money in the long term?
It's an interesting interesting phraseology on that one. The lack of interest and engagement never ceases to amaze. I think anyone out there would know, and certainly the panelists, I think would all agree, good engagement takes a lot of time and resource to be done well and done effectively. And I think with PFR over the years, government and have tried to really push and incentivize property flood resilience over the years. Various grant schemes after the 2013-14 floods and the 2015 floods. Fantastic, lots and lots of property flood resilience has been installed and carried out as part of that work. But it's really been something that's been done to the local flood authorities, and they've really delivered it as bit of a standalone grant process. Similarly, the property flood resilience market really developed, I think, probably after the 2000 floods. Lots and lots of private industry was created around property flood resilience. Lots of people going out there and talking to people directly and individually and trying to get them to understand what property flood resilience was and why people should invest in their company and their products. Lots of great work's been done in that part of the industry as well. What we need now for property flood resilience is it to really occupy that middle ground where it's something that people understand, and accept and take on board that it boils down to flood risk is something that everyone has to consider. Everyone has to take action to actually reduce the impacts of future flood events. Can't be something that's done from the corporate centre, from UK PLC directly to people. People have to be part of that equation as well. And that will take strong and active engagement to actually get that understanding and awareness there. It's getting better. Projects like this will help. And I won't profess to say that this will be the solution. Of course it won't be. But it's a step in the right direction of people starting to actually, say, yeah, I'm part of this and we can do something ourselves. And ultimately, we need to keep chipping away at this. But, things seem to be happening with greater pace. We keep talking about exceptional flood events and then the next one comes along and the next one comes along. We need to get some momentum and actually stop this cycle of, response recovery, and actually convince people that they can do something now in peacetime. Outside, 130 rooms of people logged onto this, certainly for your UK based, it's sunny, it's lovely out there. It's just as important today as it is after the flood event that's just affected people.
Great. I think that's maybe a good place to conclude the webinar today. Do you guys have any closing comments that you want to leave the attendees with today?
Okay, first call.
Right. No, I think Shelley and Steve, your presentation was interesting. Obviously, it's great to see what's happening down the road, so to speak. An hour and a half down the road, but it's. I think what we've both talked about there today is you need a public buy-in. You need businesses to buy in as well. But Steve, LLFA to LLFA. One of the things I've thought about is, should PLR be on the Section 21 register? So should they be considered as a flood asset? So if someone's moving house, for example, a property search by the solicitors would say, right, there's flood assets in this area. Is that something you think is worth talking about and raising? It's something that it would inform people if there's resilience to that property. But again, how does that impact the house value? Things like that.
Yeah, very good question, Carl. I think yes, absolutely, it should be. And I think that's one of the challenges that this project will try to explore. The 3 Pathfinders are obviously building awareness and understanding, etc., etc. But there's another bit of the project which was still scoping out the National Advisory Group. But certainly in the insurance industry, they're extremely eager to understand over the 3 Pathfinder projects, what is the extent of PFR that's out there?
Yeah.
As I said in response to the last question, since about 2000 onwards, property flood resilience has started to be installed in properties, as people have gone directly door to door to people. Perhaps it came about from insurance discussions. Perhaps it's part of the grants that were put forward after the 2 major floods. Perhaps it's part of a formal flood alleviation scheme that was funded by a legal local flood authority or another risk management authority or VA. But this whole range of stuff is out there, but we don't know where it is, and that's a problem. And that's a problem for the insurance industry. They knew where PFR had been installed. They knew what it was. They knew the standard that it had been put into, and that's one of the questions on the comments, the standard that it had been put into, because more often than not, people say there's the industry guidelines that, you can put it up to about 600 millimeters in depth, and then after that, the water pressure against the fabric of the building would be too great, so it's not a sensible thing to do to put optical resilience in any higher than that. But often it's not put in to defend a design flood event, it's put in to defend against the highest aspect that measure can defend against. So we need an understanding of where it is, the standard it's been put in at. As Shelley said earlier on, that it's been well managed, well looked after, not used as a skateboard ramp, etc. That it's not reached the end of its design life, that actually it's still, a product that can be relied upon. Is it a kite marked product? We have a kite mark out there, so is it something that's undergone rigorous testing? It's not just the product, the installers. It's all well and good having a product that's being kite marked. Are the installers of a reputable standard that are able to put it in and fully understand that they've taken on board all flood mechanisms for that property and put them in place? The framework, the new PFR framework, does go some way to doing that. The post-installation survey and report gives a lot of metrics around that, but really useful going forward. I think we're on the cusp of it potentially ending up within our reporting and our Section 21 registers, but also then that's the first step towards insurance industries being able to say, great, you've got PFR on your property. Let's premium. In a similar way as when you insure your car and they ask if where it's parked on a night, whether it's got an alarm fitted. If we can bottom out all of those metrics around PFR, know where they are, and know what they're doing, all of those other things will start to fall into place.
Because as well, in addition, where we put in PFR schemes and other flood risk schemes, it doesn't necessarily update the flood maps. So the flood maps that insurance companies use to assess the risk of flooding the properties, if they don't change or if they don't acknowledge that there has been measures of some sort put in essence to the resident, it's almost a pointless measure. It's not bringing their cost of living down, and it's still seen as a blighted area. But
agreed.
Right. So that's me on my comments anyway. So
I guess if there's no other comments, I just like to echo Jane's comments from earlier. Thank you everyone for your participation tonight. The speakers for your excellent presentations, for the attendees who've come along to set a record-breaking event for the Tyne Humber branch. Thank you very much for all that. And thank you, Jane and Barbara as well. Thank you, Jane, for managing the webinar tonight. Thank you, Barbara, for setting it up. Thank you so much for everyone's help, really, for making it a really good event.